I'm so excited to welcome back to the show Dr. Melissa McCreary. Dr. McCreary spends her professional life helping women break the cycle of emotional eating, overeating, and stress, not by hard work and willpower, but by simple changes that make life more enjoyable to create peace with food. Yes, please. Dr. McCreary is a psychologist, coach, and writer. She is the author of the Emotional Eating Rescue Plan for Smart, Busy Women, and her wisdom-filled approach is featured in places like the Wall Street Journal, Good Housekeeping, Women's Health, Fitness, and Self, Weight Watchers. And now we get her here today on Direction, Not Perfection. So welcome, Dr. McCurry.
I'm so glad to be back here again. I love talking to you. Yeah.
You two were spoiled every time we get you, and and that's going to be the case for today. I feel like we don't normally do this as far as being like a total holiday episode, but you and I were kind of talking off mic, and that we want to give our listeners and communities here today this idea that Melissa and I are going to give you tools, and you can promote them through the holidays. You can use them through the holidays, and you can also use them in real life. So I'll just, you kind of take over with that. What are your thoughts around this holiday thinking or regular life thinking?
Well, lately it's all been blending together. And I think that's important. Every year I hear from a lot of people this time of year that stuff is kind of going on hold until after the holidays. I can't do that until after the holidays, or this is a busy time, or you know what, we're just going to do whatever with our eating and we'll just deal with this in January. And there's this whole all or nothing approach, which I know you talk about, direction, not perfection, right? So the holidays get put in this little bubble, or people get really perfectionistic about how their holidays are going to go, which usually involves a lot of deprivation and misery. And I'm going to sit on my hands and that doesn't work for any of us and it blows up. And I also think that this year, I know you're seeing this, it's a weird year. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of uncertainty. People are feeling all sorts of things. And I also think that has people kind of frozen around making a commitment to, I'm going to do this thing, or I'm going to follow through, or I'm going to have the energy for that. And so I think this is a really powerful time to talk about the holidays, the year ahead, and like, how do you want to show up for yourself during this time?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Which is
Yes.
so
Thank you.
different from what do I have to do? What should I do? What am I going to do during December or over Thanksgiving if you're in the United States? Or what do you want? What do you want your life to look like? What do you want your holidays to look like? What does savoring look like? And I'm talking about food, but I'm also talking about experiences and relationships. And we get so micro focused on today or this week or this holiday season, but really, what is your future self 6 months from now? I just wrote an email to my list about this. Like 6 months from now feels really far away, and it's also not that far away. And what do you want to have been focusing on? What do you want to have accomplished? What do you want to feel 6 months from now? Now is when we're building that energy.
Hmm. Thank you. Yes, the future self piece I think is so impactful. And you'll appreciate this. We did a retreat, and one of the ladies was talking about her daughter was saying, I'm finally believing that my future 80-year-old self is real. Like I'm treating her like she's real, which made me ask the question, by the raise of hands, how many of you don't believe your 80-year-old self is real? And I had a couple members be like, I don't know if my next month's self is real. So to even
Yeah.
think like years, so for you to be saying your future 6 month self, I think for some people it's kind of hard for that person to even be real or be imagined. So maybe that's like step one.
Yeah. Well, and neurobiologically, a lot of syllables there. I mean, we know that it is hard for our brain to actually understand what is possible in that length of time. We overestimate what we can do in the short term, which is why we always have these to-do lists that are 50 miles long and we feel
Mhm.
overwhelmed all the time. And we completely underestimate what is possible, not because, oh, I could work like a maniac for the next 6 months, but just simple, consistent steps right? Yeah, 6 months. Where do you want to be in 6 months? But you can also play with this around the holidays. One of my favorite questions for people who are maybe you're going to have a couple weeks of visitors, or maybe it is a specific holiday event that you're planning. But how do you want to feel when it's over?
Mm.
How do you want to feel? What is your metric for feeling satisfied?
Mhm.
Right? Because so often our brain takes us in this track of what we have to do. And I can't tell you how many women, like just specifically talking about a holiday meal that maybe they're hosting or thing that they're going to, how many women will tell me, well, I really want to have enjoyed, I want to talk to so and so. I want to have some good conversations. I want to be sure I connect with whoever. They've got these very specific things about like, this is what would make me feel great at the end of the day when I get back in my car and I put my seatbelt on or I shut the door and say goodbye to the last guest. But what we do and what our brain tells us to do isn't in alignment, but then, usually I'm too busy to talk to those people, or usually I'm in the kitchen doing this and this, or usually, and guess what we do when we're not getting what we really need? Especially at a holiday event where there's the cookie platter and, Aunt Jones, whatever, and we use food to soothe and
Yes.
to fill in the gaps and to numb ourselves and to push down our feelings or to afterwards when it's all over and we think I didn't even get to enjoy it, so we have three more helpings. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so good. I'm going to throw alcohol in that mix too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That it's really easy to be like, I'm just going to get through this and put alcohol in there, put food in there, fill in your vice, listeners. whatever,
Yeah.
whatever your go-to grab is. And this goes back to your saying, Melissa, of what are you really hungry for? And now I've started saying, what are you really thirsty for?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It's so easy, but you don't feel better at the end. And even with food, because another thing I hear from people over the holidays, and I know I feel it too, there's certain things that you only get during holiday times, right? You enjoy them, and people don't want to set themselves up with some super strict plan because I'm a Christmas cookie person. I want to eat the Christmas cookie. And there's some cookies that only show up a couple times a year or once a year. But if you don't give yourself permission, if you don't know this is on your savor list, these are the experiences that are really important to me. Ask yourself, how many of these quote unquote treats have you not tasted? Right? You've been so busy doing the things or feeling guilty or stepping into the pantry so somebody won't see you eating them that you didn't even enjoy them.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure you work with clients a lot on that. I'm hearing intentionality out of you a lot and making sure they again vocalize preemptively is what you're saying, like kind of create the plan before going into the holiday thinking.
Yeah, but I think that plan word is so loaded, don't you? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
plan tends to sound like I talk a lot about deprivation thinking, and I like a plan. I love a good plan. Lots of people I know love good plans. However, when we're talking about food, I think so many people associate a plan with what I won't do, right?
Sure.
How I
Hmm.
will be strict and rigid with myself. And let's use the word plan, but I think it's really important to think about planning so you get what you want, right? Just
Yes.
like we were talking about your
Yes.
future self. It's not planning so I can be really miserable for 6 months so I can get to this place and then suddenly the sky will open up and life will be wonderful. It's planning to build this thing that I want, planning to feel the way I want to feel, planning to have the holidays or the new year or to enjoy your birthday in February or whatever it is. Like, how do I want to feel and what's it going to take to help me feel that way?
Mm. I think that was such a great example of just taking a party even, and I want to hug somebody on the way out the door and feel like I actually got to
Yeah.
connect and listen, and I didn't have busy brain going on with it. To pull people off to the side and be able to ask, like, how are you really? Let's not just surface level all of this. That was such, thank you for that. A great goal for people going into this season is the connections that we really could be having, because that's not stressful leaving that. Like when you get filled in on somebody's life, that's so soul filling.
When I ask people what they want, so often the list is just these simple things, right? I want my sister's going to be here for 5 days and I want to make sure we get to take a walk together. Like it's not rocket science, but it's amazing how often we don't make room for these simple little things that
Mhm.
could, and they pay us back. And again, there's a trade-off because if you're not getting what you really need, you're going to use something to compensate. And I work with people around food. I think alcohol is a great other example, or numbing out, or there's all sorts of ways we do that, but they aren't really satisfying. And I really feel like we deserve to be satisfied.
Hmm. Hmm. I 100% agree. And yes, I use again, I use your what am I really hungry for a lot with my clients. Thank you. I hope you're okay that I use that with my clients. But like even something as simple as it's like I think of it as segues into if somebody really enjoys reading and they're never giving themselves the quality time to read and they're just pressing on to the next event, pressing on to the next to do. It's like if you would have just carved out that 20 minutes to read, it's so silly the ripples that that moment has into the next positive things that happen. But
Mhm.
I think it's very hard for our human brain to see that reading can equal not nibbling later on. At 9 o'clock at night, my reading at 4 o'clock actually stopped my evening binge.
Yes. Yeah. Well, because we're taught. I mean, the weight loss industry has spent so much money and time reinforcing all sorts of beliefs that seem to make sense. Okay, right? And I'm going to talk about eating, but if you want to change your eating, you should focus on the food. And if you want to change your weight, you should focus on eating less or eating less of certain things and moving more. And it sounds so simple, but it completely disregards psychology and physiology
Mhm.
and all sorts of different, all the reasons that food is so powerful in our lives. So when you go to address the reasons, like, maybe I have a hidden hunger for rest, or maybe I really need to do some stress management, or I just need to go for a walk and get a break. Your brain is going to be saying, no, what you really need to do is be focusing on how many carbs you ate, or whatever the
Mhm.
the false wisdom of the day is in your head. And so it's a complicated thing sometimes because you can be doing absolutely the most nourishing thing for you, but if you've got a lot of diet culture indoctrination, it's so easy to go down that deprivation path. It's hard to say, you know what, really putting these cookies on a plate and sitting back with a cup of tea and enjoying these cookies is the best way not to binge tonight. But
Yeah.
it is, if that's
Yeah.
what you really want to savor.
Yes. Okay. This is actually perfect segue into I've been binging on a lot of your podcast episodes and let's talk. It's the deprivation point, and you actually labeled one of these things, one of your episodes, Stop Telling Yourself No.
Oh, yeah.
And go into that because that's kind of exactly what you're talking about right now.
That's what we do. And again, that's what we've been taught to do. And let's just be clear. There is an industry out there that makes billions with a B. It may start with a T now, maybe trillions, I don't know, but billions of dollars keeping you stuck in a cycle that doesn't work. Because if it worked, it would spit you out and they would stop making money. Right? And part of that cycle is to just keep going in there and keep blaming yourself if it doesn't work, and to focus on the food, right? So I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not we've been really educated into making a not do list, which is demotivating. It's hard. By the way, our brain doesn't really recognize negatives. It's like saying, I'm not going to think about pink elephants. That doesn't make you not think about pink elephants. It actually makes your focus, right?
Call
So
pink
I'm not
elephants.
going to eat cookies this Christmas, or I'm not going to eat, the Hanukkah treats or whatever. It's not helpful from a learning perspective, from a psychology perspective. Also, I like to talk about hidden hungers, which is the term I use for the reason that people reach for food, the things you're really hungry for that are quite often not food. But when we focus on what we're not going to do, we're not paying any attention to what we really want or what we really need. And again, it can be counterintuitive, but honestly, if you take my quiz and you find out that you have a hidden hunger for rest, you can do all the food plans in the world, but I will bet you cash money the best thing you can do is to feed that hidden hunger for rest. Go take a nap or go to bed early or address why you're waking up in the middle of the night. It has nothing to do with how many M&Ms you're eating. It will change your world, right? And
Yes.
so part of that episode was really about let's talk about and focus on what you are going to do. Also, it's really hard to see progress around not doing. But if I say to myself, I'm going to do a push up every day and I'm going to increase it by one every 2 days, I'm going to do that. I can see progress. And I know you talk about this. Seeing progress builds momentum. And when we have momentum, it's so much easier to be motivated because you know you're getting somewhere. So I really think about it around the holidays, especially, which is this time. And we haven't talked about it yet. I'm talking about it as this time with all this good stuff comes together. But for a lot of people, it's a really hard time too, right? It's a very mixed bag. But really think about what you are going to do. How are you going to show up for yourself? How are you going to take care of the things that you want and that you need? What are you going to savor? Whether it's a hard time or a challenging time or your favorite time of year, what will you do so that at the end of the day, you're like, I'm proud of what I did today, or that felt good, or I feel a sense of accomplishment, or I took one step more than I did yesterday, because that helps. That's part of what helps us keep going.
Absolutely. And I think you were going to start to go this direction with it as well, but like that doesn't always mean do more. It doesn't
Oh,
always
yeah.
mean go harder, go faster, like speak on that for a minute. I think you had an episode, yeah, breaking the stress overeating cycle without doing more. So what does that look like?
Well, I think that's part of what we're talking about. We are, again, I'm a psychologist, so I'm going to talk a lot about just where your brain wants to take you and how it's not helpful and how you can leverage your brain. But our brain just defaults to doing, right? So if something isn't working out for us, especially if we're anxious about it, think about what your thought pattern is. The first thing is like, what am I going to do? What do I need to do something. What do I do? We are doing ourselves to death. I am willing to bet 99% of you do not need more things to do. Particularly when it comes around, food, and your brain is just overfilled with choices around how to eat and what to eat and when to eat and what not to eat. And I really like to start with a focus, and my programs really always start with this. Like, who do you want to be? How do you want to be? How do you want to feel? And then work it from there. So, for instance, around the holidays, or let's say you're doing New Year's resolutions, right? And I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this because that's when our brain really gets going. Let's like take a step back and think, wait a minute, in February, how do I want to feel? Right? Do I want to feel like I am juggling the 12 new habits that I started at once and I've got all these checklists and do I want to feel like I have now got four more routines that I have to keep going that take 4 hours of my day? Do I want to feel peaceful? Do I want to feel like I've been consistent? Do I want to feel calm with the holidays? Do I want to feel like I savored and enjoyed them? And like you were saying, like I looked somebody in the eye and just I felt present. I hear that all the time, right? I just want to be present.
You're right. Our brains do go more. It was interesting. This was happening in my membership. We always start off the month, I call it an accountability week, but everybody sets their intentions at the first part of the month so that hopefully that momentum builds and we can kind of carry it through the month. And my mom is definitely, she's in my group and one of those like, add more, do more. And one of my members gave her the word, what if you tried it differently? Like, don't add more, just look at it differently. And it kind of brought up this topic of take something off your plate and the
Hmm.
settle in. And it was interesting how that resonated with her. And it actually, like, now has been a topic with a bunch of members because we don't always think to look at it differently. We keep beating down same doors, thinking we're going to get a different result versus hang on, let's totally deconstruct this and start fresh and see a
Yeah.
path that we can take with it that might be refreshing and not harder
It's
and
so
not more
hard.
time
It's
consuming.
so hard to see our blind spots, which is one of the reasons that things
Yes.
like a group program or group coaching can be so helpful. I have put together like a mini course that's finally on my website. It has not been easy to find, but it's how not to overeat no matter what. And what it is a collection of short trainings and templates and cheat sheets that you fill out that kind of cover all the questions. And there's one for the holidays. There's one for family events. There's one for vacations. There's ones for eating out in restaurants. There's one for work events and travel days because everybody has a hard time with food on on car trips and in the airport. And but it's really kind of what you're talking about. It's walks you through all the things that we don't think about. Just the fact that we're having this conversation is so powerful because 95% of women, I think, either get super strict with themselves around these occasions or they feel powerless because the occasion doesn't fit with their plans, and so we'll just wing it and see what happens. Or, you know what, I'm really excited about my trip to Mexico, so why would I want to have a plan? Because a plan feels like deprivation. What I put together is something that this isn't about depriving yourself. This is really about how do we get you more of what you want, including coming back from the event or being at the end of the event and feeling really good about yourself. Your only job is to take your next step. It's not that you have to gather yourself up all over again and start over, which is where a lot of us go with events that are outside of the norm.
Oh my goodness. Yes. It's that, okay, I'll just start when it's over thinking
Yeah.
that really it's about, I love where you're going with that. And then the resiliency part on the back end. And the less that we're disrupted with events, the less power that we have to pull in on the resiliency side. Like it's kind of both, but not to feel totally disrupted when a holiday, when a vacation, when I think summertime for me right now with
Yeah.
kids in and
Summer
out of
break.
school.
Uh-huh.
That, yes, talk me through that, please. I, I love that you have something around all those occasions. I was also thinking, okay, so we have the quiz, which I think would be super beneficial for anybody listening today to jump onto your website and take that free quiz. You had put together, I've been listening to this on your podcast. For anyone who's going, I kind of don't know how to like organize some of these episode thoughts or how to listen to them so they make sense. What did you put together for your community, and could our community maybe benefit from it as well?
Yeah, I don't want to overwhelm you with resources, but I got resources.
Yeah,
I
you
put
do.
together a roadmap. If you go to toomuchonherplate.com, that's my website, toomuchonherplate.com/map. What you'll get is a roadmap, and it's got some of the episodes that people have found the most helpful and a little description of why, like where to start with the podcast. And it also weaves in, you mentioned the quiz, it weaves in the quiz, what the quiz is, why the quiz is, where you go to, there's the link to take the quiz so you can get all of that because we get overloaded with all this information and even good information. And again, remember, your brain is collecting a to-do list. What do I need to do? I need to do this. I need to take the quiz. I need to learn about the hidden hungers. I need to, and what happens is that it's so easy to overwhelm ourselves because we're in this doing, not being mode. And don't blame yourself. That's just how we are. We're wired this way. So I always try in my programs and in my resources to like, let's make this as simple as possible. So even when you take the quiz, do not worry. You're not going to come up with bing, bing, bing. You have all of them. Many of us do. Spoiler alert. What you're going to get is this is your primary hidden hunger because that's the place to start. And then you're going to get some resources. Here is a simple step to take. And you will have, I think we talked about this on one of the episodes I was there. You'll have this eye roll experience because your brain will say, that's not enough. That can't possibly make a difference, right? I need to do, I need to do these 12 things. I hope you guys are starting to hear why the holidays are so overwhelming sometimes. Whether you dread them or look forward to them, you have a special to-do list that is just for the holidays, probably, that you put on top of your other to-do list. So when you take the quiz, you're going to get one result. You're going to get some resources that say, do this one thing and play with it, even though your brain is saying it's not enough, because it might be.
Hmm.
It's going to point you in a different direction that's going to point you to the next thing, which it's more of a map. But we can't do all the things at once. And you won't enjoy the holidays if you do all the things at once. I don't.
Agreed. No, and I think it's again having that faith and belief system that I don't have to have it all figured out. I just have to be willing to take the next step. And how nice it is to have a roadmap out of the next step and the resources. Like if we can know that we've gathered and know how to keep coming back to them in a very intentional way, that then it's not overwhelming. It's overwhelming when we think we just need to absorb, absorb, absorb. And then what do I do with it all? Like, no.
And well, to where you come back to and come back to, which is so important. And you don't have to get any of it perfect.
Right.
There's no getting it perfect. And that's, I think, why it's so important and why I'm so passionate about let's create a path between where you are now and where you want to go that you enjoy. Because it's not about creating this tightrope that you have to stay on. And if you fall off, you're going to fall hundreds of
Into the
feet
great
to a
abyss.
miserable experience, right?
Yes.
It's like, how can I dance along this path and do the best job I can, which is going to be better on some days than others, and have it take me in the direction that I want to go and feel the way I want to feel? Because guess what? Your future self, when she gets to your goal, it is going to feel like the path that you took to get there. It's going to
Mm.
feel that way. Again, we've been taught by the diet industry that if you just do this miserable thing at the end of it, you'll get spit out, you'll be at some goal, and all your problems will be solved, and you'll feel great because you fit into your genes and you'll know how to eat and it will be effortless. And yeah, no.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
and what a great visual of the tightrope versus dancing on a path. I got chills through all of that because if we danced on the path, it's sustainable. That's my other favorite word. Resiliency,
I
sustainable. Like,
love that.
we'll
Yeah.
do it, and when we do it, then when I just had this conversation with a client before you and I jumped on, has been going through such a stressful season of life. But she's maintained, which at this point is a win because everything that she's implemented, she can do, even in the most stressful season of life. If you actually like your journey and your path, you'll
Yes.
maintain it.
And because I think there are a lot of people who are finding this particular season of the world very stressful, and they're feeling like, I can't possibly do one more thing. Remember, your brain wants to do.
Mm,
But here is what we can all do, which is, look at the things that allow us to feel more effective and more confident and more powerful, because that affects
mm,
not just whatever specific goal you have, but it also affects how you feel about yourself and how you show up in the world and what you have to give to the world and what you have to give to the people in your, in your sphere that are important to you. And so I think this really is a time to think about how can I do the things I want to do in a way that make me feel empowered? Not
mm.
like, oh my gosh, how much longer can I do this? And this is really hard. And how long will it last? But like that make me feel strong and solid and powerful and like I know myself. And that is, to me, that is, let's create a path that you can dance on, that you're enjoying dancing on. And you know what? Sometimes you're going to get a little lost and you're going to skip off the path or you're going to trip and, unspectacularly fall off the path. But like, so you can keep moving. And so when you wake up in the morning, it's not like, oh, is it a good day or is it a bad day or did I screw up yesterday or what am I going to do
Yeah.
today? It's that you can feel good and comfortable in your own skin and get your confidence back that so many women have lost in this area because we need that now. We do not need more feeling ineffective or out of control or
No.
any of that. It's just so
Or
important.
judging or putting ourselves up against
Yeah.
somebody else's best them. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That was beautifully stated. And it's such a great example of my community as you are listening to Dr. McCreary right now, having you pour over them to have you plugged in their ears. And what I'm constantly saying and creating right now is this. I love the idea of dream teams. And what if we even had a podcast dream team, where our listeners could be like, I listen to these psychologists, I listen to these dietitians, these physicians, because they're all speaking over me in a way that I can always come back to that intentional thinking. Because it's really easy to go out into the world. They could listen to our episode today and jump on social media and get already caught back up in diet mentality, right? So it takes like extra listening, extra effort to pour this type of motivation into your ears. And so I just need everybody to know that, okay, you do have a podcast out in the world, Too Much on Our Plate. right? And you release weekly. I listen to you weekly. And what are your kind of last moment words here for our community? If they heard nothing else, if they could go into the holiday with just the smallest of actions, how could you set them up for success?
I think it is always you got to take a pause and you got to take a deep breath because if you don't do that, there's no room to be intentional. And I think it is always a really great question to say, what do I want? And and I think it becomes more precise if you say, what do I want to feel? How do I want to feel? Because every other thing you want is really because of the feeling it will create, right? You'll get it, you'll feel accomplished or you'll be able to relax or you'll be, wait, I want to feel relaxed. I want to feel calm. I want to feel present. And then okay, so what does that look like? Give yourself what you want and you won't find yourself doing a lot of the stuff that you don't want to do. It really is that simple.
I love this. I'm going to put you on the spot. Get ready. What are
Okay.
your intentions going into the holiday season?
Presence is a big one. Presents, not presents that I'm going to get or give, but
Lots of presents.
being being present for a bunch of reasons this year. I'm going to be hosting all of the holidays. And so really making sure it's simple and I'm present, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And to your point, I think that most people just like nodded in agreement that yes. And the more that they can pull that in, and even if you feel like you're a person who you have no idea how to grab that, again, keep listening to these podcasts. Jump on Dr. McCreary's site, get her resources. You have teammates to walk you through this process. You're not a lost cause. And I think that's important to know.
Mm.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us today. You are simply the best.
Oh, Lindsay, you're a gem, and I will come on here anytime. It's always fun. Yeah.
The invite is always there. All right.